Most Airbnb stays are forgettable. You get the code. You open the door. You check the bathroom, the bedroom, the Wi-Fi password, and maybe the view from the window. Then, after a few minutes, the place stops, feeling like someone else's home, and starts feeling like yours, at least for the night. But the strange thing about rentals is that you never really know what was there before you arrived, who still has a key, which doors you're not supposed to open, and whether the person who gave you the check-in instructions stopped watching after you checked in. These are 3 Airbnb horror stories. Names and details have been changed. Story 1. The host who knew their schedule. When Nora and Caleb booked the small guest house, it looked perfect. 1 bedroom, private entrance, self-check-in. Close enough to the city that they could drive to dinner, but far enough away that the street went quiet after dark. The host's name was listed as Martin. He had hundreds of reviews. Most of them said the same things. Clean place, fast communication, very attentive host. At first, that sounded like a good thing. They arrived on a Friday evening just after 6. The door opened with a keypad. Inside, everything looked exactly like the photos. White walls, small kitchen, a basket of snacks on the counter, a printed welcome sheet beside the coffee machine. Nora read it while Caleb carried in the bags. Wi-Fi password, trash rules, checkout time, nothing strange. Then, about 10 minutes after they arrived, Nora's phone buzzed. A message from Martin. Glad you made it in safely. Enjoy dinner at 7:30. Nora smiled at first. She assumed it was just a coincidence. They did have dinner reservations at 7:30, but they had never told Martin that. Caleb said maybe Airbnb showed hosts the approximate arrival time, or maybe Martin just guessed. They brushed it off. They changed clothes and left for dinner. When they got back around 10:15, another message was waiting. Hope the restaurant was good. The porch light is already on for you. This time Nora didn't answer. Caleb stood near the window and looked out toward the driveway. There was no main house visible from the guest house. Just a gravel path, trees, and darkness. The porch light was on, but neither of them remembered turning it on. Still, they were tired. They locked the door, checked the windows, and went to sleep. The next morning, they drove into town for coffee. At 9:06 a.m., Martin messaged again. Bakery gets crowded after 9. Try the side street entrance. Nora stopped walking in the middle of the sidewalk. She had not told him where they were going. She had not asked for recommendations. And Martin had messaged her only minutes after they parked outside the bakery. Caleb tried to stay logical. Maybe Martin lived nearby. Maybe he recognized the car. Maybe the bakery was just the obvious place guests went. But Nora couldn't shake the feeling that the messages were not helpful. They were updates, like someone checking boxes. They returned to the guest house around noon. This time, Caleb walked the outside of the property. He checked the trees, the porch, the corners of the building. No cameras, at least none that he could see. Inside, Nora checked the welcome sheet again. At the bottom, under house rules, there was a line she hadn't noticed before. Please keep to your planned schedule. It helps us keep the property running smoothly. She read it twice. Your planned schedule. That afternoon, they decided not to go to the museum they had planned. They stayed in. They wanted to see what would happen. At 3:12 p.m., Martin messaged, "Change of plans?" Nora's face went pale. Caleb took the phone from her and typed back, "What do you mean?" Martin replied almost instantly, "Most guests do the museum before dinner. Just checking." Caleb didn't answer. He locked the front door. Then he noticed something near the kitchen wall. A narrow interior door, painted the same color as the wall, with no handle, just a small keyhole. It had not been in the listing photos. Nora said it was probably storage, but after the messages, neither of them liked the word probably. Caleb put his ear against the door. Nothing. Then his phone buzzed. Not Nora's, his. A message from Martin. "Please don't open private storage." Caleb stepped back from the door like it had burned him. He hadn't touched it. He hadn't said anything out loud. The only thing he had done was stand beside it. They packed immediately. Nora booked a hotel while Caleb carried their bags to the car. As they were leaving, one final message came in. "Checkout is tomorrow morning. You're leaving early." Nora didn't reply, but when they reached the hotel, she realized she had left her gray sweater hanging on the back of the bedroom chair. She considered asking Martin to mail it. Then a message arrived before she even opened the app. Forgot the gray sweater? They never went back for it. A few days later, Nora contacted Airbnb support and reported everything. The listing disappeared for a while. Then, months later, she checked again. The guest house was back. New photos, new description, same host. And in the reviews, one new comment caught her eye. The host was very attentive, almost too attentive. Story 2. The locked room behind the rental. Derek booked the cabin because he wanted to be alone. He worked remotely and needed 3 quiet days to finish a project. The listing was simple. Small cabin, wood stove, no neighbors close by, mountain road access. The photos made it look peaceful, not fancy, just quiet. The host sent check-in instructions the morning Derek arrived. The message was short. Use the keypad. Wi-Fi password is on the fridge. Back room is owner storage. Please do not attempt to access it. Derek didn't think much of it. Every rental had some kind of locked closet, cleaning supplies, extra linens. Stuff the owner didn't want guests messing with. When he arrived, the cabin was exactly what he expected. Wood floors, old couch, small kitchen, bedroom at the back, and beside the bedroom, a locked door. It was heavier than a closet door, metal handle, deadbolt, no label. Derek put his suitcase on the bed and got to work. For the first few hours, everything was normal. The Wi-Fi worked. The cabin was warm. The woods outside were silent. Then, around 9:40 p.m., he heard a sound from behind the locked door. Not a loud sound, a small one, like a box shifting on a shelf. He froze, then told himself it was the cabin settling. Old wood makes noise, temperature changes, wind pressure. He kept working. 10 minutes later, it happened again. This time, it sounded lower, closer to the floor. Derek stood up and walked over to the locked door. He listened. Nothing. He knocked once. No answer. He felt stupid immediately. Then his phone buzzed. A message from the host. "Everything okay?" Derek looked at the message for a long time. He had not contacted the host. He typed, "Yeah, just heard something near the storage room." The reply came back, "Do not open that door." Not, "It's probably pipes." Not, "I'll check in the morning." Just, "Do not open that door." Derek didn't sleep much that night. Around 1:15 a.m., he woke to a sound that made him sit straight up. A click. Then another. It was coming from the locked room. He stared through the darkness. The deadbolt on the storage door turned halfway, then stopped. Derek stopped breathing. For several seconds, nothing moved. Then, the deadbolt turned back. Slowly. Like whoever was on the other side had realized he was awake. Derek grabbed his phone and walked backward toward the front door. He messaged the host. "Someone is inside the storage room." No reply. He called. No answer. Then he called 911. The dispatcher told him to leave the cabin if he could do so safely. Derek grabbed his keys and stepped outside into the cold. He sat in his car with the engine running and stared at the cabin. For almost 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then the porch light flickered once. Derek knew he had not left it on. Police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers entered the cabin. One stayed outside with Derek. A few minutes later, one of the officers came back and asked him a strange question. "Did the host tell you what was behind that door?" Derek said no. The officer told him to wait by the car. Later, Derek learned what they found. The locked room was not storage. It was a narrow passage. Behind it was a second living space built into the back of the cabin. A small bed, food wrappers, bottled water, an old laptop, and a separate exit leading into the woods. The host claimed it was an unfinished renovation area, but that didn't explain the bedding. It didn't explain the fresh trash, and it didn't explain why the deadbolt could be moved from the inside. Derek canceled the rest of the stay. Airbnb refunded him, but the thing that stayed with him wasn't the room. It was the timing. The host had messaged him seconds after he first heard the sound. "Everything okay?" As if the host already knew something had shifted behind that door.
Story 3. The camera that wasn't in the listing. Ava booked the apartment for one night. She was in town for a work conference and only needed a place to sleep before an early train. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a renovated building downtown. Modern furniture, self-check-in, good reviews. The host, Dana, sent a long message before arrival. Door code, Wi-Fi password, parking instructions. Then, one extra line at the bottom. For security, do not unplug devices. Ava assumed it meant the router. She checked in around 8:30 p.m. The place looked spotless. Almost too spotless. The pillows were arranged perfectly. The kitchen counter had nothing on it except a coffee machine and a small digital clock. The air smelled like cleaning spray. Ava dropped her suitcase by the couch and walked through the apartment. Bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living room. Everything seemed normal. Then she noticed the smoke detector in the hallway. It was newer than everything else. Bright white, perfectly clean. And it had been mounted at a strange angle, tilted slightly toward the living room. Ava stared at it for a second, then looked away. She didn't want to be paranoid. She ordered food, showered, and changed into sweatpants. At 10:04 p.m., she got a message from Dana. "Hope you're settled in." Ava replied, "All good, thanks." Dana sent back, "Great. Please remember not to unplug any devices." Ava read the message twice. She hadn't touched anything. She walked into the living room and looked around. Router, clock, lamp, TV. Nothing unusual. Then the Wi-Fi disconnected, just for a few seconds. When it came back, Ava noticed something on the TV screen. A black input box had appeared. The TV was trying to connect to a device named Living Room Cam. Ava felt every muscle in her body tighten. She backed away from the TV. Then she looked up at the smoke detector again. The tiny dark circle in the center no longer looked like a sensor. It looked like a lens. Ava didn't move for almost 10 seconds. Then she walked calmly into the bathroom, fully dressed, and called her brother. She whispered what she had seen. Her brother told her to leave immediately. Ava opened the Airbnb app to message the host, but before she typed anything, Dana messaged first. "Is there a problem?" Ava dropped the phone onto the counter. She had not said anything in the app. She had not contacted Dana. She had only spoken out loud in the bathroom. A second message appeared. "Please do not tamper with the smoke detector." Ava grabbed her suitcase and headed for the door. That's when she heard something from the hallway outside the apartment. Not footsteps, a phone notification. The same sound her phone had just made, right outside her door. She froze. Someone was standing in the hallway. She looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. But at the far end, near the stairwell door, a shadow moved out of sight. Ava locked the door again and called the police. Then she waited by the kitchen wall, away from the windows, with her suitcase still in her hand. The host kept messaging. "Please answer. This is a misunderstanding. You are not allowed to remove property." Ava didn't respond. When officers arrived, they checked the smoke detector. It wasn't a smoke detector. It was a camera housing. Inside was a small recording device connected to a local storage card. The digital clock in the living room had one too. So did a USB charging block beside the couch. Dana claimed she had hired a previous cleaning contractor and knew nothing about the devices. Police took the equipment. Airbnb removed the listing. But Ava said the worst part came later, when one of the officers asked her when she first became suspicious. She told him it was when the TV tried to connect to living room cam. The officer looked at her and said, "That means it was active while you were inside." Ava never booked a rental apartment again. Not because of the camera, because of the message. "Is there a problem?" Sent before she had told anyone there was.
Airbnb horror stories work because they begin with trust. You trust the photos. You trust the reviews. You trust the code on the door. But every rental still has a past. And sometimes the person who gave you the key kept one for themselves. That was the missing chapter. Comment which story was the worst. 1, 2, or 3.